these investors were dead right about the reasonings for not wanting to invest in us early on. They said, hey, the market doesn't exist. And maybe 10, maybe 20 million chest straps sell in the world. You can tell someone with a wearable device, hey, I believe you should take a measurement. And then they might take a measurement. Maybe they don't have a Dexcom system, maybe they do. And maybe they can take a blood reading with the old traditional way. It's a wearable device you wear on your leg at night as a child, primarily as a child. And it lets you know that you're likely to wet the bed, and then it vibrates to wake you up so you can go relieve yourself before you do it. And we always like ear-worn devices because the ear is such a great place to measure stuff.
Really?
But
Okay.
it's an ear-worn device for people who are they suffer from a form of, and I can't remember the technical name for this particular form of orthostatic hypotension, but it's an orthostatic hypotension issue.
Welcome to the Digital Health Transformers, a podcast series. In this podcast, we'll explore the dynamic world of healthcare innovation, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Bryce Barger, and today we have an awe-inspiring guest at the forefront of transforming the healthcare landscape. We are delighted to welcome Dr. Stephen Leboeuf to our podcast today. Dr. Stephen Leboeuf is a visionary leader and the president and co-founder of Valencell. With a remarkable 18 years at the helm, Dr. Leboeuf has driven Valencell's mission to empower individuals to live healthier lives through cutting-edge digital health solutions. Under his leadership, Valencell has pioneered groundbreaking advancements, including the world's first cuffless, calibration-free blood pressure monitoring solution and an array of accurate biometrics for wearables and hearables. Valencell's proprietary biometric sensor technology, guarded by 150 plus award-winning patents, leverages machine learning analytics for machine-grade physiological monitoring. Dr. Leboeuf's commitment to better health measurement has garnered collaborations with industry leaders. With publicly announced licensed customers such as Sunto, Samsung, Sony, and more. Beyond Valencell, Dr. Leboeuf has left an indelible mark on the tech and healthcare landscape, serving as an advisor to Dot Metrics Technologies, a trailblazing UV LED technology spinoff, and contributing significantly during his tenure at GE Research as a biosensor project manager and device scientist. We look forward to diving into Dr. Leboeuf's insights on technology, health, and innovations in chronic disease management in today's episode. Thank you for joining us today, Stephen. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just trying to make a living in this dog-eat-dog capitalist world. What about yourself?
I hear you. Just trying to get through another podcast intro, if you know what I mean. So, I really appreciate you joining me today. Kind of like we always do. We want to just kind of start with your personal and your kind of professional story. Can you kind of share a personal experience or moment that started and inspired you to dedicate your career to technology and healthcare?
Yes, I can. And my story is a weird one. You sure you want to hear this story, Bryce?
We're ready. We're ready. This is what we want. This is what we want in the
So
podcast.
have you ever been, being a native Texan, have you ever been to the Austin City Limits Festival?
I have
Well,
ACL.
I was in the Austin City Limits Festival 2004 as a young
Okay.
Chelevek and 29 years old or so, working as a scientist for General Electric. And, that festival is an awesome festival. It's outdoors, the hottest time of the year, but they got
It
things to
is.
cool you down there. Many concerts going on at once, from some of the smallest people that maybe one day will have a name, to some of the biggest people who have a name that is probably more familiar than the president's last name.
Right.
So there I was in that festival with some friends, and I could not wait to hear the Breeders. Now the Breeders at the time were doing this little offshoot with the Pixies, and I didn't mind that. I just wanted to see the Breeders. So
Yeah.
I'm there watching the Breeders, having a great time, and some of my friends grab me and say, "Hey, we got to see Sheryl Crow. She's playing at a stage, big stage down here. We're all going now. Sheryl Crow, she's a great musician. People know, of course, she's famous, right? But I mean, it's the breed is, I don't want to, I mean, Sheryl Crow, I could turn the radio on at any time and listen to her, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I decided to go with my friends because that's where the momentum was. And I decided I would join them and kind of give them company. So there I am, Sheryl Crow's on stage and a bunch of people there. She gets on and I start thinking to myself, I say, self, would you ever want to be Sheryl Crow?
Mm,
And the thing is, there she was, you know, one of the most famous musicians in the world. She was extremely wealthy, had her music albums were all over distributed. She was dating at the time who we believed was the world's greatest athlete, Lance Armstrong. She had all these things going for her. Why would I not want to be her? And I
right,
realized I didn't want to be her. And what I realized was that the reason I didn't want to be her was because she didn't really create a revolution around anything. She didn't do anything
yeah,
game changing. Her music is pop, awesome pop, yeah. But she didn't really create anything that you'd look at and go, oh, how did she come up with that? And I realized that's what I wanted to devote my life to. Things that people
right.
look back and say, how the hell did this
That
ever
happened.
get started?
Right. Yeah, I love that, and that's really who it's really and it's why we reached out to you in the first place is and why we started this digital health transformers is meeting people exactly like yourself who are pushing the boundaries further, right? Like not just settling for um healthcare as it's been the last 2 decades, right? It's like, hey, all this technology we have around us, AI, all these things, all of these great tools, let's use it to better ourselves instead of only making money, which we can make money at the same time,
Yeah.
right? But also like let's better ourselves. Let's help the world out and let's make a difference, like you just mentioned. I think that's so incredible. What have been some of the most significant challenges that you say you faced pioneering innovations in the digital health? And how did you kind of overcome those?
Well, the challenges, Valencell has been around for a while. And
Yep.
so the challenges we face, it's really interesting. Some of them have been the same, some of them have changed. So when we started the company in 2006, we realized we had this vision of things that people already wear on a regular basis
Right.
that they don't even think about. Can we somehow embed a solution inside those things they wear that collects accurate information from them that can be
Right.
used to guide targeted health solutions to them
Mm,
that will make them uniquely healthier based off the data we collect from them. That was
right.
the big vision. And so the thing about it, at that time, there were no iPhones, there were no
Right.
Fitbit devices. All of that didn't exist. And here we are, this company forming out of Raleigh, North Carolina, um, with this idea. And so the big resistance we had, the big challenges we had were convincing. We knew we would need money to get to where we wanted to go.
Right.
The challenge was convincing investors that this market was ever going to exist. I
Mm,
mean, we had folks coming to us very rightly. Now, this is not to belittle the investors. These investors were dead right about the reasonings
right.
for not wanting to invest in us early on. They said, hey, the market doesn't exist. And maybe 10, maybe 20 million chest straps sell in the world. And that's all that existed for wearables was a chest strap, this painful thing, ECG that nobody wanted to wear. Even the people who bought it didn't want to wear it. Like how what were you even talking about? The market doesn't exist. You tell me there's going to be a market, and we say, hey, when we show you that we can make heart rate super easy to measure and
Mm,
just as accurate as a chest strap, that market's going to explode. Now we turned out to be right about that. There were
right.
10 to 20 million chest straps sold in 2010 or so. Fast forward 10 years later, there's hundreds of millions of heart rate monitoring wearables in the market. So we were right about that, but their reasons made sense. So that battle that we had to do was hard there. Now, as time was going on, the wearables markets become more mature, and convincing investors that there's a wearable opportunity is no longer the challenge. Investors generally will welcome now a wearable opportunity because of the fact the market's there. But the challenge now is that there's a lot more garbage in the media. So if say for example, you had a game-changing solution for a wearable device that could truly non-invasively without any penetration into the skin at all, accurately track your glucose well enough to be good enough to dose insulin. Say you had that right now. Say
Yeah.
you really had. Okay, and that would be the revolutionary technology. It doesn't exist today at all, period. No matter what anybody says. Go online and look for that. You're going to find 25 that you could just buy right now. None of them regulated. The FDA doesn't have the ability to turn them all off. You can go on Amazon, you can buy one now, and it's complete garbage. So now you're an entrepreneur with that capability. Let's say you have that, right? You're battling all this garbage. So the nature of that problem has changed over time.
Yeah, for sure. I know. And speaking to kind of making sure that the wearable information is accurate. I mean, I actually am a type 1 diabetic using a Dexcom G7, which is
Oh
the
yeah,
closed loop system with the insulin pump. And
yeah.
I've been diabetic since I was 10 years old. I mean, I'm 30 years old now, and I just started on this closed loop system less than a year ago.
How you digging
Right.
it?
So I love it. It's life changing, right? It's like I feel like sometimes I'll forget I don't forget I'm diabetic at ever, right? But like in a way, I mean, it's like I was already a really well controlled diabetic. I was on an insulin pump when I was a child. But thank God I got off of it. But just because of all the hassle. But now, I mean, with these, but I guess what I'm getting at is um you're 100% but like correct where it's like is this information accurate? Like, okay, the technology might be there, but is it true? Is it accurate? Is it enough
Yeah.
that where you're dealing with someone's life or like a type 1 diabetic where they're giving it's life or death? Very much so.
So, Bryce, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you, but
No.
on the point of what you're talking about, here's an example. Okay, so if you're going to tell someone that you have a solution that could, say it's glucose, okay,
Yeah.
where you can accurately determine the glucose level, truly non-invasively, no
Right.
minimal invasiveness at all, right, and enough to dose their insulin. That's a big freaking claim.
Oh yeah,
That's a
that's
huge claim
massive.
that doesn't
Yeah.
exist today. I'll tell you
Right.
what does exist today. And I'm not aware that you can buy it, but I've seen the technology work myself. Is you can tell from a truly non-invasive wearable device whether or not someone's blood glucose levels are likely to be too high, too low, or in a medium range. So
Mhm.
the way this can work in a wearable device, if you keep it real and focus on the real claim and don't try and get crazy about it,
Right.
you can tell someone with a wearable device, hey, I believe you should take a measurement. And then they might take a measurement. Maybe they don't have a Dexcom system, maybe they do. And maybe they can take a blood reading with the old traditional way, for example. And so you can help screen someone to know whether or not they should take a blood draw, to know whether or not now they should dose themselves.
I
So
gotcha.
so um, there are wearable solutions that could be used in that context, but you got to keep it focused on that use case, the ones that are viable, and make sure that that use case is thought out. Because you can see, even in that use case, it's a great use case and it sounds great, and it is. But what if you have so many false positives or false negatives that you screw someone else, they get too dependent on that, and they should be dosing the cells and not, or they should maybe instead, whether it's with a dose of glucose or a dose of a medication, ameliorate that. Um, you get it wrong. So you have to think about the use case you're trying to solve and make sure the solution is targeted towards that, and that the areas where there are some risk or to humans there, that you found a way to mitigate those.
Yeah. And I guess we really kind of touched on it as far as the diabetes. What are there any other kind of like, I guess, how do you see the integration of wearable technologies addressing are there other chronic illnesses? I know we touched on maybe heart disease with the blood pressure monitors and with diabetes. Is there any other because I try to think off the top of my head of where wearables can
Yeah.
be very
And I tell
valuable.
you, I'm really impressed by how people figure out how to use technology we provided the marketplace.
Yeah.
So, for example, there are known disease conditions that people really traditionally haven't thought about how to use a wearable for. Well, one that comes to my head, and it's an example I give all the time, is a company, it's a small company, and the company is called GoGoBand. And the technology addresses childhood enuresis, so bedwetting. And what it is that it turns out that one of the going theories about what causes bedwetting, in most cases anyway, the common bedwetting case is actually an autonomic nervous system dysregulation. So your body during sleep, and it's kind of helping keeping your bladder together and everything organized. There's a disconnect there that causes you to release, and then next thing you wet the bed. And so at nighttime, you could start to see this happening by a change in the heart rate variability at night.
Okay.
And so what they figured out was how to take that data, and I believe I'm telling you right, there's a machine learning model they applied to it, to that data, to
Right.
predict that someone is likely to wet the bed. It's a wearable device you wear on your leg at night as a child, primarily as a child. And it lets you know that you're likely to wet the bed, and then it vibrates to wake you up so you can go relieve yourself before you do it. And eventually you learn how to wake up on your own and stop that.
Control,
And
right.
it's revolutionary in a lot of ways, because the workhorse has been this this plastic sheet thing that has a sensor on it that so after you pissed on the bed, then it lets you know you wet the bed. That doesn't kind of help you out too much. So
Yeah.
this
Thanks for telling me.
yeah. So this is prophylactic. It's game changing. And so they're going through it's a tough road for them, because they've had to do their clinical validations, and they're a small company, and it's a direct to consumer technology, and getting acceptance and all. It's been a slow road, but they over time they've been able to grow. But there are several use cases like that. There's a company that has developed a way with an ear-worn device, and we always like ear-worn devices because the ear is such a great place to measure stuff.
Really?
But
Okay.
it's an ear-worn device for people who are they suffer from a a form of, and I can't remember the technical name for this particular form of orthostatic hypotension, but it's an orthostatic hypotension issue. When you
Yeah.
stand up and you just don't get enough blood to your brain. Some people they do this, and to be able to know that it's happening so that you can address that is a
Mhm.
big deal. And so they've developed a technology using what our core sensor technology to be able to address that. So there's a
Okay.
number of different use cases that you could probably just think of one, a pathology that you would like wearables to address, and you would find a way to make a reasonable solution that should be able to address it.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that, and I think that's what we need, or people just kind of thinking outside the box like you guys have, and being like, hey, well, why would this not work? Oh wait, it will. We just have to do it. Someone just has to go
Right.
do it. We just have to make the so. Um, what are some of the what are some of the key considerations for integrating wearable technologies into healthcare systems, kind of um, to ensure like effective chronic care management? Is there a way that have you guys kind of overcome that hurdle where you're getting that information back to the provider?
So at Valencell, it is recent in our history that we've started to make our own solutions that are Valencell branded end user solutions. So for us, we don't have direct experience with that. We have indirect experience through our partners who have put our technology into their products. And one of the things that has been ongoing is, as you know, and this has been said almost ad nauseum, is COVID really did jolt the telehealth marketplace, and it caused
Hugely.
a lot of investment and interest in also a technology that was there on the sidelines, but didn't have a way to really get pushed into the market. It kind of pushed it through. And so that really opened up a lot of avenues. One of the things that it opened up were reimbursement pathways for physicians and clinics who would collect data from telehealth. And so a lot of our partners, what they have benefited from are these reimbursement codes that have been able to generate revenue for the clinics, and hence they take a cut of that in their system. So for example, let's say you have a platform for measuring vital signs, blood pressure, for example. Medicare, if a physician or clinic collects at least 16 days of measurements a month, then they get reimbursed for collecting that data, because it's very well known that if you self-monitor your blood pressure, the outcomes are much better, and it's some estimations that I've seen it anywhere from 5 to 19x ROI, basically for every dollar you spend
Really?
on getting someone to self-measure their blood pressure. There's a 5 to 19x ROI over the lifetime of that patient. And so,
Wow.
these reimbursements have helped, but it's a blessing and a curse because I guess some of the challenges that are there is that we rely heavily on the reimbursement process. So
Mm,
some of our partners who have a really great solution that's not reimbursed yet, the whole process of getting a reimbursement code can be taxing. But for their perspective, what they really care about is having a solution that's kind of more B2B in that case, because they're providing data to a physician or clinic rather than, say, a direct-to-consumer use case.
for sure. And getting into kind of the data-driven personalized care plans and kind of kind of taking the next step here. I know that Valencell has pioneered the biometric sensor technology that you guys have. Could you kind of elaborate on how Valencell's biometric sensor technology contributes to not only developing the data-driven personalized care plans, but also doing that for people with chronic diseases?
Yeah, so for us, the way we have interfaced with this is the data we collect is part of a system that is used as a way to um, guide the patient to better health. So, for example, someone may have a wearable with our, say, it's a wrist-worn wearable, and it's part of a telehealth system. So, our sensor technology might be used, for example, to track resting heart rate at various times throughout the day, or might be used to do some type of stress assessment throughout the day that's combined with additional data to help guide the person. And so in that particular case, when it's a non-regulated metric, so that those metrics are non-regulated, they're considered general wellness. They're used in conjunction with a platform that uses non-regulated data and regulated data in
Hmm,
order to make an assessment for the person. So in our case, the technology we've licensed is all been non-regulated technology, but sometimes our partners have integrated into a regulated product. And
okay.
in those cases, it's either been a monitoring product, such as, like the GoGo band,
Right.
or it's been a therapeutic product, like, for example, uh, Sano, which has a technology to provide pain therapeutics through
Hmm,
the sensor technology.
gotcha. Gotcha. What kind of, in your opinion, what role will, I know obviously the AI is the hot topic and machine learning and AI, and that's kind of the next, I feel like the next wave of this technology in healthcare, and kind of harnessing that in a way. What role will artificial or intelligence and machine learning kind of play in optimizing personalized care um, based on kind of the wearable sensor data?
So that's a big unknown.
Yeah,
People have made a lot of guesses because the way AI is used right now in a lot of um, in a lot of, say, digital therapeutics or in care plans is more simplistic. It's typically used, for example, in imaging to identify that these are problem spots, or maybe there's a cancer, a tumor here, or this type of thing.
here,
Or it might be
there.
used to help a metric. For example, we use AI at Valencell in our blood pressure monitoring device. So our
Okay,
fingertip BP device relies
gotcha.
heavily on it. Without AI, just could not do it.
Yeah,
But one of the I guess, holy grails of AI in healthcare is, can you collect data from people and then use AI to guide them uniquely based off that data from them to better health? And when Valencell started, that was the grand visage, the big face of what it is that we wanted to do. And we're still at a point today where we don't really have that. And it's a couple of reasons. One, the technology isn't quite there yet
mhm,
to be trusted completely for that kind of thing. But also in the regulatory environment, the FDA is concerned about this. And so
right.
they have been still trying to wrap their heads around, okay, how do we regulate this? How do we make sure this stuff is safe and effective?
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
really what it comes down to. And in a way where the regulations are straightforward, such that you can have a competitive system of people providing these solutions and being regulated in a very familiar way, not just changing on the dime all the time with new technology.
Right.
That's kind of one of the big challenges today. So the regulatory environment for this type of adaptive AI, where it's learning from you and building and changing, is particularly challenging. It's challenging from the perspective of the technology side, because as it's adapting and learning, well, I mean, or how do you know it's learning the right thing? Because it's adapting, right? And then and then from the regulatory side, if it's changing, how do you I mean, usually you have something in place, time's gone by to prove that it works. You send it to the FDA, you don't change a damn thing, and they say thumbs up, and you never change that. And if you do, you got to let them know. What happens now when this AI is learning as it's going? Well, this is
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting, very interesting. And
like,
you're
for
right. I
example,
think
let's
it's,
say Bryce, for you, okay, let's say you had a Dexcom device, which you
Mhm.
do, right? Let's say
Yeah,
it had some of our technology inside. And so what it did was it learned based off what you were eating, based off your activity, based off different activities of daily living that you're doing,
right.
um, what causes spikes and what doesn't. And you can get some better predictions about you, right? Well, now say um, Dexcom wants to launch the product on that. That's a pretty badass product. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a product that you don't even need to have an insulin pump for.
right.
A consumer who's not type 1 might want to know that. You submit to the FDA, and you tell the FDA, oh, by the way, the algorithm's changing all the time. Whoa, whoa, whoa!
What do you
What do you mean
mean?
it's changing all the time? You see, that's how do you know now that it's really tracking them right? Because it's
Yeah,
changed.
right. Yeah, because and the way and that's it is literally how AI is so powerful is that it takes that information in all the time and gets better all the time.
Yeah.
So you're right. How do
Got
we
to admit, it's getting better all the time.
Oh, yes. And I know, obviously the goal of all of this is to, empower the patient and empower and kind of how RPM devices are helping kind of chronic disease management. Yeah, and I know that patient empowerment is essential, right? Especially with diabetes and all of these other terrible diseases that a lot of the population faces. Can you share an
And it's
example of
been a
how some of these
traditional
RPM?
struggle.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but
you're
just to
fine.
what you're saying, it's been a struggle to find ways to
Yeah,
empower people to
right.
take more action with help.
Yeah, and I think because and kind of how these RPM devices and wearable technologies are empowering patients to better manage chronic disease. Like I know, like kind of what we've touched on multiple times in this call already with the Dexcom and with Valencell technology in blood pressure cuffs or in the sensor data, is how helpful when it's used correctly, right? When it's used correctly and you're educated and how incredibly empowering and helpful it is. I mean, it's truly life-changing and can be life-changing for people who deal with chronic disease. Do you have, what are some examples of some of these RPM devices doing that exact thing that I know we've touched on it, but are there any other examples that you can kind of provide?
Where maybe rephrase the question. I don't know if I quite
Yeah.
understand.
So I guess how are some of these RPM devices helping empower the chronic disease kind of
So yeah,
population.
I see what you're saying here. It's interesting because it kind of breaks down into there's different categories of people.
Yeah,
This years ago when Valencell started, there was some research that had come out showing that people who at that time when Valencell started, like I said, there were chest straps and there were some activity trackers. There weren't even Fitbit devices. There were Omron had an activity tracker. Some other companies had them. And you have to plug in the data. It was a pain in the ass to get your data from it because you have to plug it into the computer. But thing about it is people did some studies with these wearable accelerometers, and what they found was that um, just wearing an accelerometer, so just someone having one and engaging with that data, led them to better health outcomes. It led to reduced weight. It led to more activity.
Right.
The thing about it is, that's a certain percentage of the population that does respond that way. So in an RPM, for example, where people get access to that data and they can engage, yes, there are some people that engage right away. The problem is, there's a large part of people who don't. And
Right.
so how do you get them to engage? How do you lower that barrier for them?
That's a good point.
And it turns out that then things start to get more and more complex because um, some people, for example, are they won't engage with their health, but through a physician. So then you have to figure out how your solution will integrate through a physician, where the physician encourages the use of that solution because they genuinely believe it's better for the patient, and the physician knows how to communicate it, because
Right.
it's your solution. And so, the thing about it is, I have the saying, chemistry can be instantaneous, but biology takes time. And one of the
Right.
biggest challenges with some of these systems is that they have to be in the market for a while for physicians to adapt to them, to learn to them, to learn how to use them, learn when they work and when they don't, so that they can be more beneficial to the person in the end. Because some people, the only way they really will be empowered is through those communications through the physician.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's kind of, and I know I made that question very convoluted. I apologize about that. I think like that's kind of what I was getting at, where it's like once these doctors and even these patients understand the benefits of it. I mean, it's incredible. I as mentioned earlier, I've been diabetic since I was 10 years old. Um, I've been well controlled, I guess, if you will, you consider that. I'm sure my doctors might not say that for the majority of my time, but it's just incredible how much, like I would have, like 2 years ago, I'd have been like, I'm a good diabetic. I'm fine. Like my A1C's, in the eights, low eights. I'm fine. Like I manage my diabetes fine. But now with this, when I got put on the Dexcom and I got put on the closed loop system, and I've got this RPM device that I can literally, anytime I need to look at my sugar, or it alerts me if I'm going high. If I even start to creep high, it'll tell me if it's like, hey, in 15 minutes, you're going to be low, or hey, in 15 minutes, you're going to be high. Do something about it. Like, it's just incredible how like different I feel and how much better like managed my disease are. It is, and it's like, I think if the more and more people utilize these RPM devices, I mean, it can really be a life-changing
And,
opportunity. And you're 100% right. The awareness of not only people who like myself who are technology friendly who can do these things and pick them up fast, but also the challenge of overcome making sure the doctors understand
yeah,
what these products are and how to convey them to their patient and convey the importance of it to them, right? And I think that that is a huge hurdle that Valencell is
it's a huge hurdle that the whole
goes with.
industry is dealing with
Yeah.
now, because it's there are some groups of people, and maybe I don't actually know the percentage off the top of my head right now, but a substantial group of people who will really only be empowered through conversations with their physician. They
Yeah,
won't do it like you've done.
they don't
And
feel.
even what's
Yeah.
interesting, even if they have type 1,
Yeah.
people who have type 1, for example, they tend to be more proactive,
Mhm.
because it's technically a matter of life and death in a lot of
Yeah, more
situations.
invasive too every day.
Yes, but even then, there's a sizable portion there that really only interact through their physician. And so
Mhm.
in the broader population, that's even more common. So give you an example of a company that I think has done it well, is a company that it's arguably not a true wearable they provide today, but it's definitely wearable technology, and you could
Yeah.
bring it around with you as a live core. So, a live core, with the approach that they took, it was a long road, but what they took was generating these medical consumer level. Well, they consumerized or democratized medical grade ECGs, is what they
Okay.
did. But to do that, they had to get physicians using their solution and trusting it and understanding how it worked with their patients, so that physicians were part of the story. And now, that is the case. They have this, and they have a platform where you can take a subscription to the device, where a physician will read X number of your ECGs per year, to tell you their assessment. And so they figured out how to work in this ecosystem with physicians, which is a critical component to this there in expanding and democratizing that solution. And I think the wearable world is going to have to figure out how to do that too.
Yeah. How do you see, and this is kind of a really broad question and kind of like high level here, like how do you see the chronic disease management kind of evolving with the increased adaptation of RPM tools and wearable technologies?
Well, what I see is that, so let's say I'd take a big, how about I jump into the future, what I imagine?
Yeah,
What I
yeah.
imagine is
Kind of what I'm
that
asking for sure.
there'll be a diversity of solutions. I mean, some people who have particular um, diseases they're managing that require additional instrumentation, of course, it'll be different for them. But I imagine a world where, um, say, 10 years from now, everyone has a band of some
Mhm.
kind or some kind of wearable, and it's extremely low profile. I mean, very, very low profile. Imagine like those Livestrong bands from back in the day, just extremely
Yeah.
low
How
profile.
popular those were.
No screen. You don't buy
Mhm.
things with it. You probably,
Right,
it's so low profile you could wear it with your favorite smartwatch. All it
right.
does, all it does, all it does is track the key vital signs on a person.
Wow.
And you go to CVS, you get one, it breaks, who cares? You just get another one. It's very cost effective, right? And it's used to collect data to help people with prevention and help people with chronic disease management.
Yeah,
And I
that's well
think
said.
that this is where we have to go with wearables because healthcare has gotten way too expensive. It's blown up already. It's
Mhm.
just a complete travesty that we live in a system where people who are even in the medical system can't get healthcare. I mean, I know a friend of my wife who has a condition. She's a nurse. She
Yeah,
can't afford to get healthcare for it.
yeah.
I mean,
Crazy.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
really
the world,
crazy.
that's the world we live in today. And we know that a large part of our expense in medicine is chronic disease management. And
Mhm.
so we could figure out that way. It has to happen because if it doesn't happen, there's no way to solve the problem. So
Yeah.
I believe, that's the kind of thing we'll see 10 years out. Now, exactly what happens to get there and who the winners and losers will be in the market, I can't predict that, of course, but I do think that
Right.
bigger vision, is what we'll see somehow.
Yeah, and I love to like not only the management of it, but the prevention of it, right? Like, hey, let's use this technology before you become
Yeah,
type 2 diabetic,
that's right.
or hey, let's catch your type 1 diabetes earlier, or let's catch this heart disease, or let's catch your high blood pressure, or let's yeah, and that's I didn't even think about that. That's really well said from you. The prevention side of things is also a whole nother aspect, whole other conversation I feel like we could have of just the
Yeah,
prevention side
it's
of things.
and the United States is late to the game on prevention. And the thing
Yeah.
about prevention, of course, is it requires a certain amount of investment up front.
Mhm.
Um, but it's known, the data all shows that the long-term benefits are undeniable.
Right.
So the thing is, how do you develop an infrastructure for that? I think wearables are going to be a big part of that. And what's good about it is you can design the wearables. If you focus on the wearables that are just focused on measuring the metrics that matter accurately, and none of the other stuff that these wearable devices do. It's just doing that. Then you can have a platform for doing both, and so economies of scale come in. It's not super expensive at all. It's very, very cost effective to have these wearables in. Like I said, if they break, you just go to CVS and get another one. You may even get it for free. It may be reimbursed. I mean, just
Right.
as a method of getting people in touch with the data and physicians in touch with the data in a consistent way that can be used for prevention and for chronic disease management in a very consistent way.
Yeah, for sure. And also with the push of how value-based care is coming to the healthcare system, I
Yeah,
can see that even being a huge player in that as well, right?
yeah,
Of being able to speed up that reimbursement rate
that's
and
right.
help these insurance companies want to push this forward even faster. Um, Dr. Stephen, thank you so much for your time today. That's
All
all the
right.
questions I've got. Is there anything else I like to always give um, the guest kind of just kind of the camera at the end. Is there any, future projects that you can share with us? I know I'm sure you guys need to keep things very close to chest and not no anything that's not public, but any kind of kind of future plans from Valencell that you can share with us and kind of excite us?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot about our roadmap we can share. Our fingertip BP device, we're in the thick of that right now. Boy, has it been a tough road because there's so many elements that need to be involved in order to launch that product, and
Yeah.
so many things involved from not just the technology side, but the regulatory side, the commercialization side. But we
Right.
have a roadmap for what we want to do with that solution. But we also have a roadmap for what's interesting for us is, our fingertip BP device, which, I have one right here. Um, so it's a reflection mode, as they call it, pulse oximetry device. And you can see the sensor here at the bottom of this device. It's meant to be finger worn, of course. But the photoplasmography waveform at the tip of the finger here is the same as here. And so
Right.
one of the things in our roadmap is integrating the solution into a wearable form factor that you could just put on and forget about it at the digit
Like
area,
the
at the
base,
ring.
like a ring. Gotcha.
That's exactly right. And so, right now, of course, there are wearable ring devices that are used for sports and fitness and wellness, but they're not medically regulated. There's nothing that's, FDA cleared for blood pressure monitoring, anything like that. And that our goal is really to create this category of medical wearables where the wearable devices themselves have all the low profile and easy to use user experience as a consumer device, but have all of the RIGA of a medical wearable and in the regulated space so that people will know it's safe and effective.
It can be used for true chronic management as
That's right.
well. I really love that. Well, thank you again for sharing that profound insight. Really into the intersection of technology, health, and innovation. I was a fantastic conversation. I love that. It's been a really pleasure discussing the innovations in the chronic disease management with you as well. And um, really, I appreciate you sharing your valuable perspective for the audience. I think that a lot of people, um, and I say this a lot of times where a lot of people in this space, we're all very intelligent. We know a lot of things about the healthcare market and healthcare space, but being able to talk to somebody who is honing in on a specific area and has the insights you guys have is really eye opening. It helps you kind of take a step back and be like, I didn't think about that, but that's a really great point. So I really appreciate you sharing that with not only myself but the listeners. If you guys are interested in Valencell, please reach out. Dr. Leboeuf is, as you guys have just heard, fantastic. I'm sure he'd appreciate any questions, and I know his team would as well. So thank you again, Dr. Leboeuf. We look forward to following
Right. Thank
Valencell,
you.
and
Pleasure
we'll
speaking to you,
talk
Brian.
soon. Yeah, thanks so
Absolutely.
much.